Welcome, friends. My name is Caleb Williams. I was Jim's pastor here at Milwood United Methodist Church. He and Diane are part of this church family. And the fact that you're here means you loved him too. And I think that makes us some sort of extended family now. So, as family, that means around here, we want you to feel relaxed, to feel welcome, to feel comfortable enough, because if you need some Kleenex, we got those tucked in your pews. Make sure there's enough in the front row too. If you need to excuse yourself, that's fine. You can still hear things outside this room too. If you need anything, really, just holler and we will come help you, because you're family. Before we begin anything else, I want to invite you to take a breath. Be present here and now. Stop thinking about the logistics that brought you here, the problems with the highway. I know. And be present here for this celebration of the life and work and faith and family of Jim Rikkers. We've come together in our grief for this human loss, asking God to grant us grace. Grace that in pain we might feel some comfort, that in our sorrow we might feel some hope, and in this death we might see some resurrection. So I invite you to begin this service the way we begin pretty much all our services, and that is by singing. So as you're able, I invite you to rise in body and spirit. You can either turn in the hymnal or turn through your bulletin. Your program has our first hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness. And sing it out, because this is a choir member family here, all right? All right.
For everything there is a season, and a time to every matter under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time of war, and a time of peace.
Jim was a very devoted choir member to his choir, and I promised myself I wouldn't do this. He never asked for anything, but a little while ago, he came to me one night after rehearsal and he said, I heard this piece this week while I was riding in my car. I heard this piece the college choir sang. It's called Pilgrim's Hymn. He said, I really think you should look at it. I think it would be really great for our choir. It has such a great message. And I said, okay, I will be happy to do that. And sure enough, I looked at it and thought the same thing, it would be great for our choir. But the message is so profound. Jim knew even in the darkest of times that he could call upon the Lord to guide him through those difficult times. And as we sing in our second song, to guide him home.
Even before we call
Amen indeed. Jim was a marvel. I have never known anyone who could so deftly hold both a clear vision of how things could be and the practicality of how things really are. Most of us are lucky to do one.
Jim Rikkers was a visionary leader whose impact on education in Portage and throughout Kalamazoo County is still evident today. Jim was instrumental in the establishment of many significant educational programs that are still thriving today, including the Kalamazoo Area Math and Science Center, the Vine Street Alternative Program, which was the first alternative program in Kalamazoo County and is now the Phoenix High School, as well as the Vocational Education Consortium. In Portage, Jim was especially proud of the Curious Kids Child Care and Preschool Program, the development of the International Baccalaureate Program, and efforts to ensure that all the schools were fully equipped to serve the needs of students. Jim's the poster child for what Jim Collins described as a level 5 leader in his book, Good to Great. Jim was self-effacing, not egocentric. His sole concern was for the success of the Portage schools, even if he didn't personally receive accolades or credit for achieving it. Jim seemed mild because of his reserved nature, but he had a strong professional will. Jim would do anything for the district, no matter how tough or demanding. His goal was always to set future leaders up for even greater success. Jim always looked outward when something went well and credited the team around him with the success. When things went wrong, Jim turned his gaze inward and took sole responsibility. Jim was a workhorse, not a show pony. As a result of Jim's position, many people thought that he was gruff with a hard exterior. In reality, Jim was a kind soul. One day, a high school teacher with a split schedule was hurrying from Portage Central to get to his next class at Portage Northern. Unfortunately for him, he ran into the Rikkers family van. And who doesn't remember the Rikkers family van? It was like a cruise ship on wheels. How that guy didn't see it, I'll never know. But Jim was more concerned about the teacher's well-being than he was about the damage. We often laughed about what the dinner conversation between the teacher and his wife might have sounded like that night. Wife, how was your day today? Teacher, well, I ran into the boss today. Wife, oh, that's nice. Teacher, no, you don't understand. I ran into the boss. Jim had a long list of community involvement, serving on the boards of directors of the Greater Kalamazoo United Way, the City of Portage Economic Development Corporation, the Kalamazoo County Chamber of Commerce, and the Plaza Arts Circle. He was a cabinet member for the capital campaigns for the Kalamazoo Valley Museum, Pretty Lake Vacation Camp. He was also on the board of the Remenzi Scholarship Program and the Kalamazoo County Children and Family Consortium. As a result of his status in the community, he was often approached to participate in charitable fundraising events. My favorite story was when Jim agreed to serve as a celebrity waiter. People bought tables, and then additional funds were raised when people challenged the waiter or waitresses to perform a variety of humorous tasks. The waiter or waitresses could then perform the challenge, or they could pay that amount that was bid to avoid it. One of the Board of Education members, who was seated at my table, offered to pay $100 if Jim would serve the next course topless. Always up for a challenge, Jim did what every red-blooded man would do. He got his checkbook. Jim had a great sense of humor. He was a bit of a scallywag, always willing to participate in a good practical joke. In those early days, technology wasn't what it is today. In fact, during presentations to the board, we actually had a projection screen that had to be physically lowered. My friend and coworker, Tom Nover, who was scheduled to make a PowerPoint presentation, suggested to Jim and me that we remove the pull cord, and which lowered the screen. He would then ask board president Kevin Flynn, who was small in stature, to lower the screen, knowing that he wouldn't be able to reach it. When Kevin agreed and got up to help, he knew that we had set him up. Even though it was just board president, Jim was all in on the stunt, and no one laughed harder. Jim was also very resourceful. That very boardroom had an antiquated heating and cooling system. The room was always warm. Tired of hearing complaints, Jim devised a brilliant strategy. He had our maintenance department install a thermostat on a column in the back of the room. Mind you, there were no connections to the system. So when anyone complained that the temperature was too warm, Jim would tell them to get up and lower the thermostat. Invariably, people were happy. Jim was also a really good sport, willing to have fun even if it was at his own expense. At Jim's retirement reception, Tom Nover and I were asked to speak. Of course, it was a roast. Privately, we call Jim the Big Kahuna, although I don't think he was aware of that. And later, after losing so much weight, he became the Little Big Kahuna. It was truly a nickname born out of respect and admiration. Nonetheless, at the retirement gala, we asked him to wear a grass skirt for the roasting. He declined the coconut bra. With that exception, he willingly participated and certainly enhanced the experience of everyone in the room. Jim was my boss, my mentor, and best of all, my friend. Jim leaves a lasting legacy of excellence. I learned so many lessons from Jim's leadership style, lessons that I always tried to emulate in my own career. I'd like to close today with two poems that have provided me comfort at times like this. The first is Let Evening Come by Jane Kenyon. Let the light of late afternoon shine through the chinks in the barn, moving up the bales as the sun moves down. Let the cricket take up chafing as a woman takes up her needles and her yarn. Let evening come. Let dew collect on the hoe abandoned in the long grass. Let the stars appear and the moon disclose her silver horn. Let the fox go back to its sandy den. Let the wind die down. Let the shed go black inside. Let evening come. To the bottle in the ditch, to the scoop in the oats, to the air in the lung, let evening come. Let it come as it will, and don't be afraid. God does not leave us comfortless, so let evening come. The second poem is for Kevin, Scott, and Cheryl by Poet Laureate Ted Kooser, entitled Parents. My dead parents tried to keep out of my way. When I enter a room, they have already left it, gone off to find something that ought to be done elsewhere in the house. My dad rolling the Hoover, my mother with dust rag and pledge. At times I've heard their old slippers pattering away down the hall, or seen only for an instant what might have been the hem of a skirt as it swept through the door. I leave all the cleaning supplies where they're easy to find, and they seem to last forever. You don't need to go, I call out through the echoing rooms, but they've never turned back. They leave the floor shining behind them and remember to turn off the lights. With this benign haunting, Kooser is telling us that the best way to keep the spirits of loved ones alive is to allow them to continue living within us. Thank you.
not a good sign. On behalf of my mom, my brother Kevin, my sister Cheryl, my wife Laura, just reading days, my sister-in-law Karen, and my nephews Ben and Jack, I would like to thank all of you for coming today to celebrate the life of a great man. Good. A dedicated teacher and mentor, a skillful administrator and facilitator, a good listener, often thought of as a man of few words, but he was also a gifted orator and a great storyteller. He was a talented musician, gardener, and craftsman. And a devoted and loving husband, father and grandfather, brother, uncle, and friend. Although one of the first things Mom said after Dad passed was, "Your father didn't want a big funeral or any fuss made over him." And then the second thing she said was, "He'll never know." So here we are today, and we are so glad all of you have chosen to join us today to share music and memories about Dad, or Jim, or James, or Uncle Jim, or Mr. Rikkers, or Jimmy. I wish I had known that was a thing sooner. Well, that's it. That's my introduction, and that's all I wrote. As of this morning, that's all I had written. The best introduction ever that I couldn't even get through. I thought it would be easy when my siblings volunteered me as tribute to speak today. I thought it would be easy to come up with some nice things to say about our father. And it was true. But initially I thought, well, I'm just going to wing it, right? I don't need to write anything down. I'm used to speaking in front of crowds. I have 510 marching band members right now back in Virginia having rehearsal. In my absence, I don't mind speaking in front of crowds. But then when I said this, I remember we were at the kitchen table, and I saw the eye rolls and the groans from my siblings, and my wife that suggested I reconsider. So I did start to write out some things. But it took a while. As I mentioned, I thought this would be easy. As it turns out, the idea of writing down some things to say about a family member who has passed is much easier than actually doing it. And I will venture a guess that speaking about it will be indeed even more difficult, but we will see. For years, there's been a quote about success hanging in the house. And for years, we knew it was there, and we knew it was one of Dad's favorites, but never really thought much about it. But after he passed, Mom had mentioned that as one of his favorite quotes, and so we decided to put it in the program. What is success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is success. So before reading the quote, really, I saw the title, and I just assumed that I knew what success was, at least based on our social norms today. What is success? Money, right? Success is power. Success is accomplishing things. It's popularity. It's notoriety. Success is money, right? But after reading it and focusing on those beautiful words and thinking about those words in relation to our father, I don't think there's a more perfect quote for Dad, for the life he led, and honestly for the type of life and the success we should all want to have in our lives. So I thought today I would use that quote to speak about Dad, about how he's successful, and use this quote as an inspiration. To laugh often and much. I'm sure all of you can think of times when Dad would laugh, either with you or at you, for whatever reason. And even if just hearing him laugh sometimes just made you laugh. I have here slow motion Cheryl. One day, I didn't think I'd be able to fit this in, but here we go. We were out front playing, I don't even remember what we were doing. Oh, it involved a ball, maybe tennis, I don't know. But Kevin hit a long one. Cheryl thought she could get it, and she tried really hard, but her little legs couldn't keep up with her body, and we, in slow motion, we watched her. And Kevin like, she's gonna get, and then she bit it. And Kevin and I were laughing the whole time. And Dad was standing there watching, and I noticed that his concern, as it should have been at first, was, is she okay? And when he realized she was, he started laughing. And then you knew that it was okay to laugh because Cheryl was okay as well. But his laughing was usually in response to appreciating what someone had said or done. And Dad appreciated a lot in others, whether it be funny or otherwise. He could make us laugh. To win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, Mom spent many hours writing and rewriting Dad's obituary by hand. And then we would type it up for her, maybe making a few adjustments or creative embellishments here and there. But one of the things she was adamant about was the line, in Portage, he took great pride, with the assistance of many able and dedicated staff members, in the development of the Curious Kids child care and preschool program and the International Baccalaureate program. And when I first typed it, I wanted to delete that sentence, with the assistance of many able and dedicated staffs. Not because it wasn't true, but it was just too long of a sentence. But she insisted that that remain. And as soon as she said that, I thought, shame on me for not realizing how true that was about Dad and how important it was that that sentence was in there. And everything he did, he prioritized working with others and sincerely appreciated the contributions they made to what he was doing, whether it be with the schools or at church or even at home. Even though at home, I will admit that teenager triplets did not necessarily have the same impression of appreciating the contributions as we were mowing the lawn or weeding what seemed like, at the time like acres of land of weeds under the mulch. When he was superintendent of Parchment, the three of us vividly remember piling into the back of the family truckster and driving around town, personally delivering the minutes for every school board meeting to every school board member. And at the time, it was pretty boring, right? I think the only good thing that came of it is we initially gained an aversion to easy listening music, but I think we all know now as 40-year-olds it's actually something we kind of like. And every time we turn on the bridge on Sirius XM, it reminds us of driving in the back of that station wagon, passing out those minutes. But now, it's so easy to admire the efforts that he took. I mean, who goes around and delivers minutes every week before every school board meeting to the school board members? Now, granted, this was a little bit before email, but still, he personally, every week, would deliver those minutes to every one of his school board members. That is how you earn the respect of intelligent people. Speaking of the family's truckster and cars, in hindsight, a lot of our fondest memories and most vivid memories were for some of our travels, especially with Dad driving. We got to know a different side of Dad maybe than some of you have. He was slightly an uptight driver, although in hindsight, driving myself now as an adult, I completely understand his dislike of loud noises or distractions while driving, completely understand. He didn't like it when we were making a lot of noise or being annoying. He would often randomly swat behind him to stop one of us from doing something, which was almost impressive, but we used it more as a game to get out of the way, and we'd laugh at him when he was trying to swat us, stop us from doing what we were doing. The table. So Mike brought up what did you call it? The cruise? The van, right? The cruise ship on wheels. It really was. And some of you have seen pictures or seen it. And it really was. It was a beautiful conversion van that at the time was very impressive, and now it's kind of embarrassing. But it was very unique. In the back, it had like a boat. It had a circular couch with a round table that went around it. And it was perfect for a family of 5, and we would often, when we were traveling, we would play games, and it was great. But one trip, the well that table sat in rusted out as we were driving, and the table fell through the floor. Now, For someone who is a little uptight driving and doesn't like loud noises, I can imagine that he freaked out when he heard that. And of course, the first thing he said was, "What the hell did you kids do?" Right? Like, sorry. But all we did is sit there, and the table fell through. I mean, I will never forget that. And then, you know, being a man of many solutions, we pulled off, and he got a plastic cup or something, and managed to create a new thing that said. And of course, I will never forget, though, the rest of the trip. You could see through the hole, even though that cup was there, and I thought it was going to, I mean, the whole time, like, oh, this is going to happen again. I don't know what I was going to do about it, but it was pretty nerve-wracking. Oh, and then the deer. Again, Dad doesn't like loud noises or interruptions. And Mom and Dad's term of endearment was deer. They call each other deer. And we were driving to New York or from New York through Canada, and beautiful field over here, and Mom saw a deer running in the field. So to let all of us know that she saw a deer, she just shouts out, "Deer!" Oh, he flipped out, slammed on the brakes, the car swerving all over the place, because he thought she was warning him that we were about to hit a deer, and all she wanted to do was point out this beautiful deer that's not anywhere near the road. Oh, that was fantastic. Potentially dangerous, but fantastic nonetheless. And then the snow. You know, one of the lessons we learned from our parents was in the winter, they always said, make sure you have your coat on and your gloves. And we're like, we're just driving to Grand Rapids for Christmas. Why do we need to put all that stuff on, or why do we need to have it? We're just going to go from the car to the house. Well, we didn't think about the fact that we may slide off the road into a snowbank one Christmas. And then it was very important that we had our gloves and our coats and everything. So we did learn from what at the time we thought were silly requirements from our parents. But I digress. Another tradition that's written about in the obituary is the annual holiday party hosted by Mom and Dad at our house. Another great way for Dad to give back to his school district, to acknowledge the work that the folks did with him. We view this a little bit like slave labor, because to us we had to clean the house, we had to put things on the table, and then they would banish us to the basement, kind of embarrassingly, as people would walk in and then call us back upstairs if there was something that needed to be done, like hang up a coat or put some new food out. But it was also when I learned a very important skill. Mom would bake for weeks. For weeks, she would bake all kinds of desserts and appetizers, and we would store them on the back porch. So what I learned to do was, how do I get out and take some of the food and sneak it, and then rearrange the food so she doesn't notice that I was eating parts of the food. It's a great skill that I learned from that. But again, now we look back and appreciate how important it was to give back to those who were part of that vision of his, and how selflessly they did that every year to make them feel like they're part of a great thing. Another thing we learned was how to talk to adults, which again, now that I'm teaching young adults, that's necessary. A lot of our friends growing up didn't have an opportunity to meet and greet with so many adults that my dad worked with. And I think because of it, we are and were much more comfortable speaking with adults in an intelligent way. And I think, again, at the time we didn't realize it, but now looking back, it was an incredibly important lesson for us to learn each year from our parents. Of course, I think it's safe to say that all of us here can think of many ways that our father worked to win the affection of children. His entire career in life was dedicated to teaching and caring for children. From his own children to thousands in the classroom or in his school districts, even to his grandsons. Watching him be a grandfather to Benjamin and Jackson allowed us a chance to see another side of Dad, and maybe made us a little bit jealous at times. We always enjoyed watching Dad play with them, putting them to sleep, humming them to sleep. Enjoyed watching them play and enjoy the pool during the summer after we had moved out. But we're a little bit jealous that he seemed to be a lot more lenient with them than he was with us. One day, Jackson was someone's birthday, and he was bringing the birthday cake from the dining room table into the kitchen, and it just fell right off, onto the floor, everywhere. Now, Dad came in and laughed, right? Had that been 20 years prior, and that was one of us, he wouldn't have been laughing, I guarantee it. Cleanup also seemed to be a lot more fun with the grandsons than it was when we were having to clean up. In fact, I don't ever remember a song being sung. I also don't ever remember asked to clean up. We were just told to do it, and we did it. But there's a song, a cleanup song that he said, I mean, good for them. But I don't remember it being that much fun when it was Dad. We never asked, but we just did it. Oh, the toys. Speaking of toys, I don't remember having many toys growing up. I'm sure we did. Don't get me wrong. We didn't have a completely funless childhood. But we just had a different way of being raised, I think. And it's not a bad thing now. Right now we can look back and appreciate all the rules that we had and the expectations from two parents who truly wanted us to be successful. But again, as a child, we weren't allowed to play video games. In fact, I'm convinced that when we would go to our friend's house, in the Nintendo years, I'm convinced they called them and said, don't let our kids play video games. Convinced of it. Hide them, like we didn't know they had them. Although I found a picture, and I don't know if you saw the slideshow, I found a picture of Dad and Kevin playing a video game at Carrie and Todd's house. At first, I'm like, where was there a video game that my father had his hands on? And then I realized it was Christmas at Carrie and Todd's, and they were playing the video game. He was such a hypocrite. We had what at the time we thought were irrational bedtimes, especially during the summer. I mean, who has a bedtime during the summer? And we just talked about this the other day, vividly remembering having to go to bed before the sun was down, right? It was 8 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock during the summer, and that long, slow march to the bedrooms as we looked out the front door and saw and heard all of our friends playing outside, and here we are in our pajamas going to bed with the sun out. Oh, we could only have soda or pop and dessert on weekends, right? But we finally remember having, being able to, on Fridays, we could eat with a TV in the family room, pizza, diet pop, and ice cream. Well, ice cream was, ice milk, because we couldn't have too much sugar. Man, we were just sheltered. We didn't even have potato chips until we were 4 or 5 years old, and even that was by mistake. Mom never gave us junk food, good for her. But one day, I guess, we went to our friend's house and came home, and we're like, what are these? And that was it. She gave in, and we could have potato chips once a week on Fridays in front of the TV with Diet Coke and ice milk. Our parents were strict. But again, in hindsight and as an adult, we are very fortunate to have had two parents that wanted us to be successful the way they did. Always amazed to watch Dad respond to criticism, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends. He had a very public job. And everyone's a critic, especially when you're the one in charge. But he always seemed to handle it with sincere concern and professionalism, usually. A good role model for us, indeed, and for those with whom he worked. Although I'm sure he didn't appreciate it as much as they should. They didn't appreciate it as much as they should. Dad always respected different opinions and welcomed constructive criticism, as long as the criticism was constructive. On snow days, speaking of everyone's a critic, being the superintendent's kids was tough because we were always the target of, are we going to have school or not? So we were in the line of fire to a lot of those critics, and a lot of those critics were our friends. So we would start asking Dad, that night, are we going to have school? Are we going to have school? And then when it get closer, our friends would start calling us and ask us if we knew if we were going to have school, so then we had to ask. In fact, I guess our neighbor would start calling. The neighbors behind us, a young boy, and he must have asked his parents, the Drayers. Alex Drayer said, do you think Mr. Rikkers is going to cancel school? And they said, well, call him and find out. So we called. And Dad said, well, I'll let you know in the morning if you want to come out with me at 4:30 a.m. when I go on the streets. And he declined. He says, I'll just wait to find out. But honestly, that was the first time that we realized that Dad actually went out. I just assumed that someone did it for him, right? Someone went out and then made the call. But Dad actually, every day that there was a threat of snow, would personally go out and drive the roads with his staff to make sure it was safe for his students and his staff at Portage. And I cannot confirm nor deny that we had some conversations about maybe covering the driveway with water that would ice up so that when Dad would back out, it may be too bad to go to school. But again, now we can look back and appreciate how much he cared about everyone's safety. to appreciate beauty. To be successful is to appreciate beauty. Dad's hobbies, although many may have been hidden from the public, most people saw Dad at work, so they weren't necessarily aware of what he was interested in. But he did have some hobbies. He appreciated beauty in nature. He was an avid gardener. He appreciated beauty in crafts and construction. He was very handy. He finished 2 basements in our homes. He helped put in a pool. He built all the decks and the sheds at our homes. And since his own homes, he's been helping us with projects around the house and building. He's incredibly, incredibly handy. And he was, of course, interested in the beauty of music. Music was always one of his biggest passions, whether it was a performer or simply a consumer of music. I credit my love of music and my talent to him. No offense, Mom. We appreciate your efforts in the car and humming in the store. But my father and my grandmother were truly those who passed along their musical talent to us. And as we know today, singing in the choir was one of his greatest passions. And I would like to thank Darlene and Carl and to the members of the Chancel Choir for providing Dad an important outlet for his talent and a community he truly cherished being part of. But I think one of the things we all appreciate about music is not just the art that we create, but it's the community with whom we create that art. And I know that in addition to singing in this sanctuary, he enjoyed being with the people that he was singing with. And that is incredibly important. To find the best in others. Sometimes that's hard, even with your own children, because I'm sure there were times when Dad struggled to see the best in Kevin and Cheryl. He and Mom would often say, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything. And while they didn't necessarily follow their own rules as they got older, they were certainly excellent examples throughout their lives for us about keeping your mouth shut unless you have something good to say. Something I think we can all agree our world could use a little bit more of these days. To leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. As I look at the sanctuary today, filled with family and friends of Dad's, colleagues, former students, members of the choir, and Milwood congregation, I think you will all agree when I say this is something that Dad was successful at. I can say without reservation that he definitely left this world a bit better, because he left all of us a bit better. Better at who we are, what we do, and how we do it. But he didn't do it alone. As soon as I started to think about what I was going to say today, I wrote 2 things down. Number 1, I am speaking on behalf of the family, not just me. Number 2, in all caps, don't forget about Mom. Well, we're here today to celebrate the incredible life of our father. Every great Jim needs an equally great, if not greater, Diane. And we certainly have a great Diane as our mom. I know many don't view being a stay-at-home mom as important, and many don't have any idea of what they do, and I'm sure we didn't appreciate that either when we were growing up. But looking back now, she did a lot for us, and she was a great, great team member with our father and raising us. But she was a relatively lazy disciplinarian, in hindsight. I'm not sure lazy is the right word. She was efficient. She was efficient. She believed as a disciplinarian that she would work smarter, not harder. In fact, I kind of just figured this out recently when I was interviewing a student for a job, and he was one of the most interesting interviews I've ever done. He wanted to be one of our band photographers, but he had his whole life plan of becoming an entrepreneur and making it rich. And he had a ton of side jobs, including making rings and forging swords. Very interesting. But one of the things he said was, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, and I've learned a lot from this book called The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And I said, well, wait. It's 40-hour work week. No, he says, it's the 4-hour work week. I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. it's a 40-hour work week. So no, it's the whole concept is you develop a business that runs itself, and then you don't have to run the business. It just does it for you. Like, well, that is so millennial, right? That is so interesting. But Mom understood that a long time before this guy that wrote that book. She only had to do two things to keep us in line. We were so well behaved that she never had to discipline us anyway. But two things. Number one, all she had to do was open the second drawer from the left in the kitchen. That's all she had to do. At least the three of us who lived in the house knew what was in that second drawer to the left in the kitchen. Anyone have a guess? The wooden spoon. That's all she had to do, is open that drawer. And that usually did it. And now I think about it, I can still hear how the roar of three of us fighting with each other and running around would cease immediately when we would hear that drawer open. Silence and fear at the same time. But if the mixture of the silence and fear and the door didn't work, number two, just wait till your dad gets home. That's all it took. She was a millennial before her time. Worked smart and not hard. She ran the house and the family, but the two of them were a perfect team. He couldn't have done it without her, and he knew it. And we wouldn't be the same individuals if it weren't for her, and we know it. It was a unique experience growing up as Rikkers. Not only were we triplets, but we were the superintendent's triplets. Many times that was a benefit to us, but sometimes it was not. It definitely added pressures and demands on our lives that some don't have to deal with, but in the end, it was all worth it. We had to share our dad with a lot of people. And I think growing up, we resented it. He wasn't home a lot. But now, looking back, we are incredibly grateful that we were able to share him with everyone that we did. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. I wish I had told Dad more often how much we appreciate everything he has done for us and for everybody in his life. But I know that we can tell him every day, maybe not through our words, but through our actions. It is now our responsibility to make sure that his successes become our own, to live our lives with purpose, to remember, to acknowledge others who influence us, and to make sure our future generations know about his legacy, the lessons we have learned from him, and their responsibility to continue to be successful and encourage successes in others. As the quote would end, this is to have succeeded. As we conclude, and mentioned in the program, everything that has been sung today, the hymns that were chosen, is because they're Dad's favorites in some way. And when we were planning this, the celebration of life is a tough one because let's face it, we're all very sad here right now. But the whole point of celebrating a life is that while we are going to be sad, we need to turn that sadness into joy, right? And celebrate the great things we had from Dad while he was here and take those into the future and share those with others. And I wanted to sing this hymn that we're going to end with in a bit for two reasons. Number one of Dad's favorite traditions was watching the Mormon Tabernacle Choir's music. What's it called? Music and the spoken word. Every Sunday, he would watch that and just enjoy the beautiful music. And at the close of every one of those broadcasts, they sing this hymn, and it was one of his favorites. And whenever I hear that, I think of him. And initially, Carl was concerned. Well, usually we end with something a little bit more upbeat, and I totally get that. But the more I read the text, the more I thought about the message of that hymn. While we are saying goodbye, what we're really saying is, we'll see you soon. And so when we close today and we sing that hymn, I encourage you as as I will be doing myself, of thinking of this as not the end of a relationship we have with Jim, but as a different type. And we're not saying goodbye. We're saying that we'll see him soon. So as we leave with our heavy hearts, let us leave with a new purpose, a celebration of who Jim was and who we can be because we've had the privilege of working, living, and loving him. Thank you so much.
That took some courage. Thank you. You heard it. It's clear. While Jim gave his life for others over and over again, he loved you, Scott. He loved you, Kevin. He loved you, Cheryl. He loved you, Diane. There is no doubt. No doubt. I invite you into a spirit of prayer as we offer Jim back to his Creator. God of us all, your love never ends. And when all else fails, you still are God. We pray to you for one another in our need and for everyone anywhere who is mourning with us today. To those who doubt, give light. To those who are weak, strength. To those who have sinned, give your mercy, and to all who sorrow today, give us your peace. Amen. God, everything you've given us is yours, and at first you gave Jim to us, and now we are giving him back to you. So into your hands, merciful Savior, we give back your servant Jim. We commend him, and we ask that you acknowledge, we ask you humbly, a sheep of your own fold, a lamb of your own flock, a sinner of your own redeeming. Receive Jim into the arms of your mercy, into the blessed rest of everlasting peace, where there is no pain and suffering, and into the glorious company of those saints of light, of his family who went before him, and give him a chance to look down on us and look at us right now and tell us one more time, we'll see you soon. Amen. I invite you to please stand as you're able and join me in the prayer that's printed in your programs there. O God, the life of Jim was a source of admiration, respect, enjoyment, and love in our hearts and lives. We are blessed and comforted by your presence. Our hearts sing your praise for the impact Jim has had on all who are here and all whom he has touched. Strengthen and encourage us through the difficult moments of grief and loss, and bring us peace. I invite you to stay standing and join us in the other hymn that's printed in your program. Choir is going to sing the first verse and refrain, and then we'll be invited to join in for behalf of Diane and the whole family, I want to invite you to join us for more time of refreshments and storytelling and pictures as we reconnect over this little family reunion we have here. And as soon as I finish my blessing, we'll let them walk out first so they can make it there to greet you. So friends, may God's peace, which passes all understanding, be with you today and remain with you always. Amen. Amen.